This next conversation is a wonderful contribution to the world of psychotherapy. My beautiful friend Sonia Ahmad is a psychotherapist from Canada. She wrote a book for children using AI to explore grief and the benefits of mindfulness. Sonia is the multicultural therapist on Instagram. Her book, titled Taro, is available on Amazon now. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did in having it. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, leave a comment about using AI in this way. Enjoy.
It will stay at the center of that mountain. There are 7 billion people in the world. Not everyone's going to get this.
Great morning, great afternoon, great evening, wherever this conversation finds you. I am Travis Gray. Today we are transforming with another amazing guest, Sonia Ahmad. Sonia is a therapist in Canada and author of a phenomenal children's book titled Taro, A Story of Mindfulness. And if you know Gray Transforms, we love meditation, mindfulness, transpersonal psychology. It's all so fitting. Sonia, how are you?
I'm doing so good. Thank you for having me in your space
Absolutely.
today.
Absolutely. Thank you for being in the space today. So, how did you we have interacted a little bit on Twitter. I don't even remember like Twitter, you connected people and I don't even know like what tweet landed us, in each other's field of influence or sphere of influence, but we connected there, and I noticed that you're writing a children's book, you're a therapist, things like this. So I was like, oh, that's a perfect match, and I love the idea of writing a children's book. But before we get into that, how did you end up, like, what is the story of Sonia becoming a therapist?
So, my story of becoming a therapist is definitely a personal journey where, as a teenager, I was desperately in need of a therapist and someone who understood me. And a lot of my challenges at that young age were, immigration stress, cultural stress, religious stress, just like family conflict, things like that. And so I remember going to my first ever therapy appointment with my Pakistani mom and dad and sitting down with them. And we had our initial session, and the therapist looked at me after the session and she was like, I think your parents just have a problem with you being a teenager. And I was just like, oh man, like so much of the cultural, religious, other aspects of the story of my story just completely went over her head. And she wasn't able to pick up on those things just because she didn't have that culturally sensitive approach. So after that experience, that really pushed me into, wow, like I want to be that person that I need right now. So my journey was very much trying to fill that gap in the services that are available to people who are a little bit different.
Wow, that's interesting. You became the therapist that you once needed in your life to help resolve some of the conflicts that were happening in your family. And your tag, you're the multicultural therapist. And prior to our conversation, you had told me that you are a Pakistani ethnically, and you grew up in the UK. Is that correct?
Yeah, so my dad's side of the family, very British. And then my mom's side of the family, very Pakistani. Like she grew up in a small village and moved to the UK, got an arranged marriage, and started her life in a completely new place. So, similar to that, I was quite young moving from the UK to Canada and readjusting to, yes, it's still in the West, it's a similar society, but it's still very different in many ways.
Yeah, wow. So, what are your thoughts on arranged marriage? Having that been that's that was the catalyst to create you and your family dynamic. What was it? What are your thoughts on that culturally in your life, the arranged marriage?
Well, I grew up very, absolutely not. I'm never doing that. Don't want to entertain it. It's not my thing. But as I've grown and seen the underlying values of a system like that, I can appreciate it. Is it for me? Is it something that I would ever participate in? I'm not too sure. I haven't ever participated in it in the same way that my mother did. But I do see how, a lot of the time relationships these days, not many people are on the same page. Um, I feel like with arranged marriage, there's always an emphasis on the future and compatibility and common values and, really coming together in a more permanent way as opposed to dating around. Like dating itself is not really a concept in that culture just because what's the point? So that's something that I kind of grappled with growing up of like, no, I do want to date. And I absolutely see the point in dating and going out there and learning what is it that I like, what is it that I don't like. But then sometimes when you are dating, you do end up in situations where one person's more serious than the other, one person's long-term goals don't match with the other, compatibility issues, or if you do end up staying together, now we live together and now it's not working, or now that we've established ourselves as a couple, our families don't like each other. So it's a lot of, there's great sides to both arranged marriage and casually dating. But would I personally ever get an arranged marriage? I don't think so.
Yeah, in modern times, the arranged marriage model seems like it's ever more challenging to follow that, to have like as society globally develops, we are gaining a lot of these Western values of individuality and this individual decision making, and really like the dating dynamic and experience in dating builds a lot of really incredible social skills in other areas of your life, and including making you a better partner for future partners, and and vice versa, like we grow and learn from each other. So yeah, that's really interesting. Just curious about that. When you say that is a part of your cultural upbringing, is that your mother had that arranged marriage. So you're a multicultural therapist. You've become the multicultural therapist that you needed in your life. It's interesting when you said that therapist told you that, oh well, they seem to just be having a problem with you being a teenager. I can see how that's very, they went very surface level and not touched anything deeply meaningful to me and my life and my situation. So like, why would I continue to go to, like, you're saying nothing, a whole lot of nothings, and it is a challenge to have a teenager in your life. Like there is this transition period that happens in that teenage area. I, just like you, had a positive experience, or I had an experience with a therapist that was a part of, definitely influenced me to do the same. But when I was a teenager, I had a lot of conflicts with my mother because I was my mom raised me by herself. My father passed away when I was very young, and I was in and out of trouble, legal trouble. I was a problem child. I had a lot of, there was a lot of weight that my mother had to hold from that, and then we just did not agree on a lot of things, and that there's a lot of conflict within our household at that transition year and that transition stage of life. And we found a therapist. The first therapist I wanted to go to, he just really, he didn't, it just didn't speak to me. And then we went to another therapist, and this therapist, Dr. Dross, is the first time I'm dropping Dr. Dross on the on the podcast. And so he was great. I really enjoyed what Dr. Dross did for us as a family, my mother and I. And that did have a positive influence on what I, ventured towards. And it's incredible how, we're always these like wounded healers. That idea that you become the therapist that you needed once in your life as a therapist. Now that there's always a sort of underlying experience, or there's often an underlying experience that you're healing yourself.
Even before the therapist journey itself, even in high school and undergrad, my initial attraction to psychology was me thinking, hey, there's a lot about my own mind that I don't understand yet. And there's so much to learn about why I think the way I am, why I think I'm different from other people, what makes my experience unique to me. So I think throughout that process, it's been a huge journey of looking inwards and healing myself inwards before I can even venture out and say, how can I help you? First, I have to help myself.
Wow. Yeah, I very much align with all of that. I was once having very similar thoughts, like what like I was having thoughts of like how did I end up in the situation that I'm in right now without I really needed masculine support. I didn't have a father figure, didn't have a coach. I was in some way I was raising myself in a lot of ways. I was raising myself, and so I was trying to figure this out: how to be a man, how to be masculine in the world. And I don't have guidance, and I'm asking for guidance. And I had asked a question to like a probation officer. Essentially, his name was Dante. Dante came in to my house at one time when I'm like career searching, and I told Dante, I asked Dante, "Hey, do you have a piece of advice for me?" And he said, "Do what you're passionate about and try to make money doing it." I was like, "Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right."
Mm-hmm.
He left. I remember, I very vividly remember sitting back on this chair, and I'm in front of the computer, sitting back on this chair, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I passionate about? What makes me different? What makes me different about my way of thinking that can help inform this situation or other people going through this situation? There's sort of like a broken psychology
Mm-hmm.
societally, like that has put me in this position without mentorship, without like guidance. I'm a troubled kid. A lot of troubled young men without fathers in their lives. That happens a lot, and it's due to not having that father figure. So why did this societal construction not provide some of that for me? So
Mm-hmm.
now there's the paradigm problem. And so then I thought, oh, it's going to be psychology. And then later on, I figured out how to narrow that. So it's beautiful that I just see all of that mirrored in yourself, and then you connected to the multicultural aspect of your life to become the multicultural therapist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's just me seeing the value in, or, being in situations, in counseling situations where not a lot of weight was given to multiculturalism, and really diving into how, the unique cultures that we're in, even the cities we've grown up in, even something as small as the neighborhood we live in has a different culture, has a completely different culture to someone in the same country as you. So it really does, for me, it's inseparable from a person's identity. So having that emphasis on the multicultural aspect, that's huge for me.
You decided to do this children's book. What inspired this idea?
So, at its base, what inspired the idea was wanting to create a resource for younger people to just introduce them to concepts like grief, loss, mindfulness, And this again came from a personal reflection. At the time that I began writing this book, I had never experienced loss or grief or death in my own personal life to a level that it would have emotionally impacted me. Like, yes, I've had family members pass away, but it was never emotion. It was never an emotional experience. I didn't ever have to go through the grieving process as one typically would. And so just reflecting on myself being a, 25-year-old therapist now, and being aware of the fact that, okay, where are the places where I can't really go with clients? And knowing that, hey, if I haven't really experienced grief and loss, I don't feel like I'm competent, not that I'm not competent, but I don't have a proper basis to guide someone else through grief and loss. So I was very aware of the fact that I don't have that skill set right now, and I don't have that introduction, I don't have that emotional experience. So this book really stemmed from me wanting to make a resource where children are in a very gentle way introduced to the concept of losing a loved one, and giving them a very basic tool for, combating that, or beginning to explore those feelings or sit with those feelings in a way that isn't harmful for them.
Wow, that is an inspiring question for a therapist, for any of the therapists listening out here, any of the listeners, or just yeah, any of the listeners. Look, this is an inspiring question. What is the area that I would be least capable of serving? What might I have the least understanding, or the least capacity to serve, to help in that way? If I'm lacking some sort of information in this area that I will potentially see a client for, then I should explore that, and I should find that out. And that's great that you decided to do that, and it created this book out of it. That's really fascinating, really powerful question for all therapists to be asking themselves. What are the areas that you would be, lacking the, man, you just said the word and I'm forgetting the word.
I forgot to now. The capacity, I don't know what I said, or competence or something.
The competency. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm lacking competency in this area, then I work for the national, just United States of America, the Spiritual Emergence Network. And the purpose of the Spiritual Emergence Network, it's sort of like a suicide hotline. How people even get the number is beyond me. I'm not sure how people get connected with this. Maybe they type in spiritual emergency, they find it that way. But we have a network of providers that have competency in the area of spiritual emergency. And other providers might not have the competency in this area. And so we try to connect people in person with providers that have that competency. So if there's an area of competency in your therapy practice that I might be lacking that area. I don't know if I would be comfortable having the conversation with that particular person about that particular thing that is going on in their life, those particular circumstances or traumas, or I don't know if I could do that. Well, then this is an opportunity for you to go in, venture out, and explore what kind of information would you need to do your best. You don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be the best anybody ever has been in that area, but to be able to do your best to serve, that's amazing. It's an amazing question to ask yourself.
And I think it really, for me, what drove it home, that there are places that, most of us, or most of us do have a place where we can't go. And what really highlighted that for me was another counselor classmate of mine while I was doing my practicum. She's an amazing counselor, very psychodynamic, and she had recently lost her husband. So the way that she metaphorically described the grieving process as taking like a little dinghy boat across a black sea and then having to find your way back, just the power of that metaphor. And wow, I've never felt like I've been in a situation where I've had to do that. So just knowing and being aware of, am I the best fit to help a client go through that black sea if I haven't been through that black sea, or is another counselor who has the experience and the knowledge and the skill set to guide them a better fit? So for me, it just came down to the ethics of, will I be giving this client the best care if I do take them on and I don't feel 100% comfortable exploring that certain area?
Wow, that is a powerful image on grief, that you're in this little dinky boat going across the Black Sea and you have to find your way back to shore. You're lost out in the Black Sea and you have to find your way back to shore. That's scary. It's a powerful image, a profound image it's necessary to feel the weight of that, to understand that grieving experience. It's a good point of entry empathically, to be aware, to have some empathic awareness for a client, for somebody going through those things. That's really incredible that you were inspired in that way. And so this story, Taro, the Taro is a child who he befriends a deer, but the deer passes away. So tell me, how did you figure out this story? How did you put those pieces together? How did that story evolve? How did it develop? How did you write this?
So I knew that I wanted the meditation, and it's like a small guided meditation that's in the book. I knew I wanted that to be a central part of the story, and just an homage and respect of the origins of mindfulness and meditation being, Oriental Asian origins. I really wanted to respect that. So that's why Taro is Taro and not John or Bob or whoever he could have been. And I think I did go back and forth for a while of who Tara would lose. Would he lose a grandfather? Would he lose mom? Would he lose dad? Would he lose best friend? And this comes back to trying to make the story as gentle as possible. So I think I chose a pet or an animal just because it seemed a little bit less intense and heavy for a young child to read a story about, a little Bambi deer passing away, as opposed to mom, dad, granddad, and also being cognizant of, if there is a child reading this who has lost another person, re-triggering with, too similar of a story may not be as impactful or helpful. So that was the story of Tam, the deer, and Taro being best friends. And then, very gently, even in the story, there's not too much emphasis on the way that the deer has passed away. It's just kind of like, the deer's gone and this is what we're going to do about it moving forward.
Like this situation happened. This is what Taro is going through right now.
Yeah.
Wow, that is such a smart way to think about all of those things. Really applaud you for that, Sonia.
Thank you.
To have really thought about, I don't want this story to be so similar to a child's real experience that it could be triggering for them. That is really smart counseling, like forward thinking as a counselor. And then to have it something that they can identify, like they can connect with, but it not to be so violent and then but it's a very it's a very heavy topic. Wow, you just that really is artistically done for you to have thought of all of those things and then create it that way. So that's really awesome. And then also you used AI to create this images. Can you tell us how that happened? How did you use the AI? What inspired you to use AI?
I was actually inspired by one of my close friends who is very into AI. And this is around the time where, ChatGPT, Midjourney, all these AIs had just hit the market or just become live. So it was actually him who brought the idea of, hey, writing a book in general into my awareness. And I kind of riffed off of that and thought, hey, that's an amazing idea. I want to do that as well. So after writing my version of the story, I had ChatGPT edit the story and shorten the story because after research, I realized that, a typical children's book should not be, 40, 50 pages. It can only be one sentence a page, very limited, very small. So I had the editing software there just, take out things that were not really as important to the story. And then for the images, I used the Midjourney AI through Discord, which was a super interesting process, very time consuming. Probably the most time spent on the book was spent generating those images. And the thing with AI, it is beautiful. It does do amazing work, but you realize when you're using it that it's only going to give you so much based on what you're asking from it. So a lot of the creative process of formulating the images was just going through the prompt again and again and again and again, thousands of times to generate consistent images, consistent themes, consistent characters, because you could write the exact same prompt two different times with an hour, like time between, and it would spit completely different images out at you. So that was a really frustrating part of the process where I think I'm saying the right things or asking the AI to do the right things, but it's not always going to do that. It's only going to give you so much. So a lot of that process was also taking those images from the AI and then reworking them myself on Procreate and, spending time doing that as well.
Wow. That I'm really inspired. You are brilliant, Sonia. You that
Thank
is the
you.
perfect way to use Chat GPT. I've recently had some conversations with scholars at the university about different things like what kind of academic policy should be put in place for Chat GPT. And I think it's
Hmm.
just too big to put in any kind of policy. Like you could try, but it's too big to do that. So it's like they're trying to protect the integrity of the student or protect the protect encouraging students to have integrity in their studies. So not to use ChatGPT to cheat, essentially, but as an editor, it's perfect. It's great as an editor. So you use it as an editor. First of all, that's awesome. Great way to use it. Perfect way to use it. And then and you're doing the research to know that like I can't write a 50-page book for a 5-year-old child,
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so like a 10-page book, something like that. And the single sentences. So you used it to take out all the fluff, all the extra stuff, and to have just the minimal, very concise, and then using AI to create the images and knowing that like and from trial and error, I can tell that the way that you're speaking that you have the experience of having tried this, done this, and you found, oh well, it's not popping out the same thing. It's not consistent images. I had to figure out a way to get it consistently popping out the images that I need so that the storyline stays afloat. it's incredible. That's so inspiring for therapists, clinicians. If you're looking for other ways to serve your clientele, other ways to serve children need served the most. This is early intervention work. Have them read a book like this before they have to deal with that. Maybe a child has a parent or a loved one that is going through cancer. Maybe they might pass away someday. How do you have a conversation with them about this? Well, you get them the book Taro, and now they have some connecting story. That's like the deer I'm really mind blown. This is really powerful stuff. Really great work that
Thank
you've done,
you.
Sonia.
Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope more people will appreciate it and get a chance to check it out as well. So how long did this process take you from from idea to completion?
Well, I feel like my ADHD really kicked in with this, and I just tunnel visioned it and got it done in like 3 months, probably less.
Amazing.
But it wasn't really time consuming to me in terms of writing the story, and that kind of came naturally. It was really just the images and the AI and working around that took a long time. And then on top of that as well, I self-published it through Amazon Kindle publishing, as opposed to going through, like a proper publisher, which I think generally, if you're trying to make a resource to market or to, have on a shelf somewhere in a bookstore, you would typically not self-publish it. But for me, this kind of just started out as a fun little project. And again, it came from that self-reflection of I didn't have this. So in the book, I dedicated the story to my cousins and nieces and nephews as a gift for them, essentially. So I was surprised when, people saw the book and were buying the book and reposting the book, because I didn't make it for that reason. I made it for, my little kitties. So it was beautiful to see that the response I had got, I was not expecting in any capacity. So it was beautiful that, I had some teachers say that they bought copies and put them in their classrooms and kids were reading it, and some people had gifted it to their kids or loved ones, and it was just beautiful to see that. And on top of that, I had a few friends and people who follow me on social media who had said, "Hey, I bought this for myself because I didn't have anything like this growing up either." And it was like a nostalgic thing for them to, as adults, sit down with this children's book and just be present with it and read it.
Wow. Yeah, that's so great. I'm so happy for you and the success that you've had so far on the book. I look forward to hearing more success from it and other projects. It makes me think of two things. One, AI is great. AI is usable. Don't think that AI is as easy as it seems to be. You will still have to do the work. You will still have to make it do what you need it to do, and that will be a challenge. And two, if you have an idea, work that out. Get that out and express it and publish the doors that opens for you to have published that book is phenomenal. It sounds so great, like how much feedback that you got from that. And yeah, that's really great. I'm really I'm happy to see another therapist having put in the work and created something of such value.
Thank you. Thank you. And your first point there, point one of AI, it's not as easy as you think. That was a huge hurdle for me to climb after publishing as well. And obviously telling people about the book and them almost disregarding the creative process of what it took to write this book because I used an AI. It was very much a lot of people assuming, oh, like you didn't actually do anything. And then me going back and explaining that, hey, if I had actually paid an illustrator to do this for me, it would have saved me 70 to 100 hours of my time, that and I would have had a perfectly beautiful consistent book, yes, but the actual time and commitment and effort that it took for me to generate every single image and rework it, it was 100% more demanding on me myself than just going to an illustrator and having an illustrator do it. So I think that, it's like flip sides of the coin where some people see AI and recognize that it's just a software and it's not going to give you something without you specifying to very specific degrees what exactly it is that you want it to do. And people have seen this with ChatGPT too, where you ask it to write something in less than 400 words and you have to ask it 4 times to do that before it actually even does that. So they're getting better, of course, but I think people who have been using AI to create, I now also give them a lot more credit as well because I know how difficult it is to actually make something good.
They don't understand the process that you had to go through, and that's awesome that we're having this conversation so that people can hear that and know that process was not. You didn't type 2 sentences and then this book was created. You had to put in the work to do this, and the pioneering that you have done to be a part of that, the fresh wave of AI and stuff, for you to have pioneered and been a part of that is amazing. And a lot of people don't have the know-how to see that as an opportunity and catch that wave early enough on. They're usually like, oh, I'm gonna wait till it's a part of my phone, and then by then it's like it's too late to have even attempted to do anything, and then you'll continue to have the interest, the compounding interest of your success. And having done this once, do you plan on doing another book? Do you plan on doing more?
I think at some point, absolutely, I would love to do more. Would I do a children's book again? I'm not sure. I would love to do like a poetry book or something at one point or another. But I think if I was ever to do a storybook again or a children's book again, I would definitely want to do it the same way that I did the first time and really have that creative control 100% of the project.
Yeah, that's amazing. I would love to see you put out a poetry book where you've created AI images that translate those poems in image fashion. I think that would be so cool. And that sounds a lot more time sensitive than just the children's book. Like if you have 10 poems, like that sounds that'll be rough.
Yeah. And it was scary being part of that first wave as well, because researching it initially after my friend had told me about it, I had also gone on Twitter where people love to post about the stuff. And there was I'm not sure who he is exactly, but an account on Twitter who I think he was actually the one who created the first children's book. And he got probably majority negative backlash on this. And all the people were going onto this book listing on Amazon and just downvoting it, and not even people who have bought this or purchased it, and just 1-star review. This is not real. He cheated. He's just used an AI to write this. And the book itself was about a little girl learning about AI. So it was like very, like what did he do wrong here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're always going to see it as wrong if they're not in the know-how. Like if they don't already have the information, they don't already understand the subject from an experiential point of view, like somebody that has actually dove in, then they just don't know. You know, it's just like it's like an artist that makes music. You think that they just like they went in, it took them 5 minutes, the song's only 5 minutes, and then they went out and somebody that is angry about their success, kind of resentful or jealous of their success, has not dove in and tried to make that 5 minute song. Because I'll tell you that 5 minute song probably took 5 hours or more, 5 days, 5 weeks, you know, things like that to like really get it to really like mold it to what you were looking for it to be. Is It's a challenge, and it's worth it. It's a beautiful challenge. You had mentioned, oh, I had a lot of ADHD during this process, and then I think it's interesting how often this idea of how like our agency employed to a certain project, a passion, or an ambition of ours, how easily or capable are we of employing our agency to make that project happen? Abraham Maslow, one of the founders of transpersonal psychology, wrote about Jonah syndrome. And Jonah syndrome, it's the story of Jonah in the Bible. Jonah had this clear calling from God to save this city. Like it was so clear. He knew exactly what he needed to do, this calling from God, like directly from God. And because it was so clear what he needed to do, what he wanted to do, because the goal was so clear, the objective was so clear, it's so clear who's going to benefit. All of the clarity was there, but because of that, it stifled him. It stifled his progress. He was like scared in his own skin. He was fearful, and so he ran. He ran more than anybody's ever ran from anything. He ran into the mouth of a whale. He hid inside the mouth of a whale, thinking God was not going to find him. God was gonna find you anywhere you go, especially inside the mouth of a whale. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's too obvious.
Yeah.
For God, that's too obvious. And so he, you know, that is this idea of Jonah syndrome. So Abraham Maslow saw that as like a neuroses of personal growth. So I get stuck, and then I don't continue. Like I get stuck, I get scared, and it's for me in dissertation and other doctoral students in dissertation, there's a lot of challenge with that same neuroses of personal growth and getting stuck. It can feel like, and how are you ever going to get out of this? And there's no clear path out or things like this. So when you were making this and you felt stuck at times during this process, I'm sure, how did you continue? How did you see this to the finish line?
So for me, it was very clear cut. There were times using Mid Journey where I was just so frustrated and I was like, I'm over this. Like, I've plugged in the same prompt a million times. It's not giving me a consistent image. The images it is giving me are not very good. I've had to do this so many times over and over that there were times where I just had to shut it off and take a break. And I think that's the hard part about using AIs to do these things, is that it is very demanding, it is very time consuming. You do have to put a lot of energy, just staring at a screen for hours and hours trying to get this done. It's not the same as me writing the story in my notebook and creating it that way. And again, if I had used the Illustrator, none of the stress would have even been in my life, period. So I think just slowing down and taking the time, and obviously just remembering why I'm doing this and what the purpose of it was. And it's interesting you used like a religious story just now, because writing this book for me, it was very like, not a lot of thought went into, like, surprisingly, not a lot of thought went into it, which is mind-blowing to me because a month after I published the book, I actually ended up losing my 9-year-old cousin to an anaphylactic shock. And that was the first time that my entire family has really lost a child or lost anyone close to us in a while now. So even that process of, hey, reflecting in that moment of why did I just randomly decide to write a children's book on grief and loss? And a month later, in my very house, in my immediate family, I lose a child, and there's 10, 15 children now dealing with grief and loss for the first time of their best friend and of one of their loved ones. So it was very, and my family is very religious as well. I had a lot of my family members say, it feels like you had a premonition to write this about this topic and you did it effortlessly, because when they were asking me, why did you write this? I was like, I don't really know. Like, I just did it because I felt like doing it. And something inside of me it was a calling for me that this is something that I need to do right now. And that very heavily tied into the fact that there were very few times through the creative process that I was discouraged. I was very much just like on it every day, doing it, excited, happy to be working. There were a few moments where I was like, oh, this AI is so annoying. I don't want to do this anymore. But it was just like a frustration in the moment. It wasn't me abandoning the idea by any means. So I think me reflecting on that, and of course, we make our own meaning, we derive our own meaning from things that happen in our lives. But tying this book to my calling spiritually was super important to me and to my family as well.
Yeah. So it wanted to come out of you. This idea
It
wanted to
needed
come out of
to,
you.
yeah.
You got out of the way. you,
Mm-hmm,
you got out of the
mm-hmm.
way. And whenever you felt the frustration, that is you getting in the way. So you take a break. I need to step back. I need to get back out of the way of this thing that is coming through. That's really great. And earlier we were talking about, you mentioned poetry. There's a great poet, Charles Bukowski, who
Yes,
wrote I
familiar with
forget the name
Bukowski.
of this poem, but he's kind of a dark guy, but really beautifully
Yes.
profound poems. I think I've liked a lot of dark poetry growing up, now that I think about it. But Charles Bukowski, he said that as like a writer, or as if somebody has something, it has to need to come out of you. It can't be like, oh, I kind of want to do this and I should do it. No, if it's not just hungry, clawing at the insides of you to get out, uh, Charles Bukowski suggests that you don't do it at all. It's like, then you should just give it up. If it's not just hungry to get out of you, hungry to emerge into the world. So you had this thing. It was when you were. I want people to be careful with the way that I heard you, at least, was that not a lot of thought went into this. Well, it didn't require a lot of effortful thinking energy,
Yeah,
but it was coming out of you. It was inspired from you. So I don't want to minimize your
100%.
effort and your value in putting all of that into the book, Sonia. And so it's really incredible that you were able to get out of your own way and let that thing happen.
That's such a amazing reflection from you with that, because I think a lot of human creativity, it's just the universe harnessing and expressing itself through you. And there's an amazing book called The Artist's Way, I believe it's called. And it's about, it's written by a woman, I believe, who was a writer, and she was a bit of an alcoholic. And so she was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And then she was suffering from huge creative block. And so this is her explaining how she got out of this block by realizing that this creativity, it's not coming from me per se, it's coming from a bigger force that needs to be expressed. And the best way to do that is to get out of the way. because a lot of the time, especially as writers, artists, whatever we might be, we're our biggest self-critics. We criticize ourselves the most. As soon as we step out of the way, the things that naturally arise, and again, it's like without thought, without too much conscious effort, things will come up and manifest in you. And it even reminds me of like Einstein saying that, I don't want to take credit for these mathematical laws that I supposedly discovered because they came to me in a dream. I just dreamt it and then I wrote it down and I woke up and now everyone's treating me like I'm some kind of god. I don't even feel like this came from me. And of course it did come from him, but it's again that bigger, creative force that is connecting us all, and we all have access to that.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Beautifully said. The creative, mysterious force in the world is operating through us, and if we get out of the way, we can allow it to create the things that need to be created through us. Use us as a tool. Use us as a tool for the distribution of that wise creative mystery that knows better than we do what needs to come through us. Thank you. I think that is an incredible story for people to hear how you wrote a story. I just everything about this conversation is really awesome, inspiring to me, and I know a fellow therapists and people worldwide that'll be listening to this conversation, watching this. Thank you so much, Sonia, for your time. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you so much for getting out of your own way to allow that creative force to operate through you and create this phenomenal children's book on mindfulness, Taro. And so everyone check that out. That's on Amazon. There's I'm sure there's other places that you'll be able to find it eventually. We're going to talk right after this. I think that there's maybe some other elements of the self-publishing that you'll find inspiring other avenues. So that's really great. Where can people follow you and connect with your stuff? Do you have some more more direction on where they should get this book?
Yeah, so it's best found on Amazon. It is available worldwide on Amazon. For me, myself, my main therapist page is just at Multicultural Therapist on Instagram. And yeah, that's where you find me. Thank you so much, Travis, for, creating such a beautiful podcast where you really bring people on here and talk about important things, and the space that you've created is beautiful. The energy you have is beautiful. And I absolutely loved having this conversation with you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me, Sonia. Thank you so much.
You're thinking, who is this man talking?